Okay, if the board will come to order. I'd like to welcome everybody to the September 5th St. Croix County Board meeting. We'll begin with a moment of silence, and then we'll move on to the Pledge of Allegiance and then the roll call. Thank you. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. The clerk will call the roll, or we'll use our machines if we're up. Christine, it's not on the screen up there. Christine. Great. Public comment. Do we have any public comment tonight? Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to our consent agenda. Would somebody like to move the consent agenda? Supervisor Austin moves. Supervisor Counter, seconds. Any discussion? Oh, yes. And also Supervisor Counter had brought to our attention a correction. We'll add that into the minutes. They'll be corrected as they're officially put out. Thanks, Supervisor Counter, for that. And you also seconded that. If there's no discussion, all those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed, nay. They're adopted. Consent agenda. The next item.
We're going to get the second then from Counter. It's too far away to say.
Consent agenda is adopted.
Oh, there it is.
Next item of business is our presentations and recognitions, and the main item is the presentation of our audit for 2022, and I'll call on the county administrator to lead that discussion.
All right. I'll bring up the audit report on the screen. The auditor was supposed to be here tonight. I think we've paid the bill. We paid the bill, didn't we, Chuck? Okay. So in lieu of the auditor being here, I'm going to pitch hit tonight. In the packet and on the screen, you'll see the audit summary. We'll go through the audit summary instead of the full audit report because it's 11 pages then instead of 170 some. So in the audit report, I've seen this enough times, so you guys will probably recognize it. They'll go over the general conditions of the county, the opinion that they provide, that the financial statements are fairly stated, and that their unmodified audit opinion has been provided. So that's generally what we see, and that's a good thing for the county. That means that everything that they were able to review was in order. So they'll review the internal controls, and they'll also state any material weaknesses we have. So the two material weaknesses that they noted was material audit adjustments. They sort of hit us with this every year because if they have to make any adjustments at all to our books, they say there were material audit adjustments. So unless we're perfect, that's always going to be on there. So that's not the way the auditor says it, but that's the way I'll paraphrase it for you. And then the second one is limited segregation of duties. This one is something that we strive hard to accomplish, but isn't always the case. So anytime you end up with a case where somebody has control over more than one facet of the accounting sequence, you have a limited segregation of duties. we'd have to hire multiple staff in order to separate all those duties out, and then there'd be nothing for them to do in between. So really, from a practical application, this is something that smaller organizations will see, and so that's the two material weaknesses. They've been on our audit every year that I've been here in the last decade. So I don't anticipate that they'll change anytime soon, but those are the weaknesses within our system that the auditors do point out for us. The nursing home is a separate audit opinion. That one was also fairly stated with an unmodified audit opinion. So into some of the data that the auditors will go over. They'll review some of the past few years. And one of the main things that we tend to look at every year is the unassigned fund balance. So the St. Croix County has a general fund unassigned fund balance of 35%, plus or minus 3%. So we're looking at anywhere from 32 to 38%. And right now, at the end of 2022, we were at 41.9%. So what that is the unassigned fund balance, which is at $18,257,000, divided by the total expenditures of the general fund, which is $43,000. So that's 41%, 41.9%. So that's where that comes to. So that means that we have, $1 million or $2 million over what our target is. So typically what we do every year after the audit report comes out, we'll come back, make a recommendation from the administration committee meeting in the form of a resolution to a future county board on what to do with that excess. Typically we've reallocated it to capital projects, we've reallocated debt service fund, and sometimes to some other uses. So that's what we're looking at there. Industry standards for county governments in Wisconsin generally is higher than our 41.9%. They're usually going to be more 50 to 60%. We run it a little bit closer, a little bit tighter, but that's the policy that our county board has established for us. We'll look at the other fund balances then. So our special revenue funds, which includes health and human services. So you can see that that fund balance went from 3.7 million to 5.3 million. So that looks like a large jump in their fund balance. There's really two reasons I would attribute that to. One is they've just been flooded with COVID money, and so lots of federal dollars have come into the health and human services, and they haven't spent all those yet. So there is a plan to continue to spend those. So I believe that that number will come down. And the other thing is, as we have both vacancies and we have other grants that come in during the year, we're able to offset some of our expected expenses with those savings or the additional grants that are coming in. So that's helping to contribute to the fund balance. So those are all positive things. Other counties that see $1 million dips in their fund balance, are envious of where we're at, but it's really due to the good management of our health and human services and to the incredibly generous federal government. Our capital projects fund, that went from $8 million to $88 million. If you can do the math there, there's an $80 million difference, and that's the government center expansion project. We borrowed the money, but we hadn't spent any of it really by the end of 2022. So we're sitting on all of that cash. It's in the KIP fund, so there it shows up on the books. It's still all there. On the debt service fund, you can see a fund balance of $3.7 million. This was actually part of the bond issue. The $80 million bond issue had a premium on it. So what happens is the effective interest rate that we got right before interest rates shot up was about in the 2.7, 2.8%. It was somewhere right around there. But if you look at the coupons, they actually pay 3, 4, 5% interest. And so what they do is they give us more money than we asked for. So we asked for $80 million. They gave us $83.7 million. And so that $3.7 million is a premium. So we'll pay more interest in the future to make those bonds more marketable. But we take this $3.7 million, the value of those future interest payments, and we use it to reduce our current debt service levy. So it goes into the debt service fund. It's the only thing it can be used for. So that's where it went. And what we did was we actually prepaid in 2023 here some of the principal. which helps us lower the future costs for the county. But that's why you'll see that jump up in the debt service fund. On to the healthcare campus. So the healthcare campus and the highway department are enterprise funds, so they run more like a business. So when we look at those, we look at some things that are non-cash flow. So we look at first their operating revenues and their operating expenses, and we get to a position which shows a positive cash flow. And then after we make some adjustments, it changes. In this case, the healthcare campus had a decrease. Let's see. Actually had an increase of $135,000 in their net position. So that's basically change in the value of the organization. So if you're looking at it from a business standpoint, a private business, it's the value of the business increased by $135,000. On the highway side, you take a look at that. Similarly, their net position had increased by about $1 million. And Robbie keeps saying that he's going to spend this money, but part of the reason that the fund balance and the highway continues to go up is contributed capital. So we spent $27 million, built a new highway facility in 2019, and ever since then, you can see that their net position is increasing. Well, it's because they have an asset that they're depreciating, so the asset stays at the same value, but their depreciation grows every year, and they don't have any payments because the general fund, the county, makes the payments on that. And so their value continues to increase when someone else pays your debt. So, tip for you, if you can get someone to do that. Our internal service funds, we manage several internal service funds, our liability insurance, our health insurance, work comp, this retirement savings, and county fleet. So the first three are really self-funded health insurance, or not self-funded, self-funded insurance plans that we have. So liability, health, and work comp. We reinsure at a certain level. So like liability insurance, we have a $500,000 deductible. Under health insurance, we have a $175,000 reinsurance level per employee. Work comp is $550,000 per claim. So we're self-insured to a certain extent, and we buy a reinsurance. And the fund balances then basically speak to the health of those funds as they move forward. You will see a large jump in this retirement health savings fund, where we went from $400,000 to $2 million. That was a fund balance transfer into that fund. They had actually dipped negative. But because of the policy decisions of how we are paying that out, we put a surplus of cash into that in order to help it without having to dramatically then increase the operating expense going into that. We put a sunset on that retirement health savings benefit. And so what I anticipate will happen is that that money will continue to dwindle down. And if I projected it correctly, it'll work out just perfect, but we won't know for 20 years, so I'm not too worried about it. But that was the plan, but that's why you see that increase in there was a fund balance transfer into the retirement health savings fund. County fleet, fairly small, not much happening there. And then under our obligations, so this is something that we want to keep an eye on. So we're allowed to borrow up to 5% of the equalized value of the county. So we're at 18%, which is fairly high for a county. Generally, anything over 20%, is going to catch an investor's eye. So we're getting up there. But the government center project is a once-in-a-generation type project. They last did it in 1993 when they originally built this building. The construction of this addition will last us the next 20 to 30 years. And that debt will be paid off over 20 years. But debt, though, I do want to point out, is something that you guys want to continue to watch. And we do have projects coming up in the future that are going to require debt, but we'll want to watch how those are structured, how those payments are, and we want to make wise use of our debt utilization. And that's it for any entertaining stuff. The rest of it gets into some of the new accounting and reporting standards, which I'm sure the auditors would have gone over in great detail for you. But we'll skip over that for now. Are there any questions on the audit report? Overall, I think what you saw was all the fund balances were going up. Everything was higher than it was the prior year, which, St. Croix County is in a really envious spot compared to a lot of our peer counties. So I think we're very fortunate here for the financial position we're in and with the good management that we have with all of our staff.
If there are no questions for the administrator, I'd just say thank you for another great job. It was a very good audit again. Thanks to the finance director, yourself, and all the staff that went into that. Ken, do you want to stay up there for your next report, or do you want to do it from here? You've got the financial reports.
Yeah, I don't actually have the financial reports queued up here, though. I think it's just the audit report. Yeah, it's just the audit report. So I'll turn it back over to Christine. As far as the financial report, this is through the month of July, where we're at. So we're just past midway through the year. Looking at everything, though, we're really right on target with where we'd expect to be at this time of year. I don't have any red flags to point out for you, but if there is anything that you saw in there, I'd be happy to try to answer those questions.
Seeing no questions for the administrator, we'll move to the business portion of the agenda. Both items on the business portion came out of the Public Protection and Judiciary Committees unanimously, and I'd call on Supervisor Leap if she'd like to make a motion to bring the first one to the floor.
Yes, I'd like to make a motion to confirm the classification of St. Croix County jailers as protected occupation participants.
Supervisor Carlson seconds.
Second.
Discussion.
I don't know if he wants to, do you want?
Yeah, if you'd like an explanation on it, I'd be happy to. So the state passed a new law that allowed for county jailers to become a protected class. So in 2011, the protected class was stripped from most employees other than from law enforcement. There were 12 counties that classified their jailers as protected, and St. Croix County being one of them. So we were already in a protected class. We've been that way ever since 2011. But the other 60 counties, their jailers were not in a protected class. They were in a general class. So the new law that the state passed said that you can the jailers can classify themselves as protected, but they'll have to pay the difference between the two. And the 12 counties that currently are classifying their jailers as protected, you can just continue on the way you are, which is what this resolution does, or you can reclassify them as general, and then the jailers individually would have to classify themselves as protected, and then they would have to pay the additional WRS contribution. So it'd be about a 7% additional expense out of their paycheck to do that. So the Public Protection and Judiciary Committee had unanimously recommended the status quo, just leave things the way they are. But it was an option that the county board did need to make in order to clarify what we wanted to do.
Seeing nobody asking for further discussion, and unless there's any objection, we'll just do this by voice vote. All those that, oh, I'm sorry. Who did I miss?
You missed our county clerk.
Missed our county.
We're having to manually put in everything.
Okay, that's what we'll do. Have to find.
That's why you wanted it.
Okay, the resolution designated county jailers is adopted. Thank you. Next item of business is another item that came out of that committee, establishing a pretrial subunit of the Justice Support Services Department. And I'll call on Supervisor Ramberg if he'd like to bring that to the floor.
I'd like to make a motion to bring the resolution establishing a pretrial subunit of the Justice Support Services Department authorized to perform pretrial release supervision in St. Croix County.
Second.
I'm sorry. Well, we're fighting over seconds. Okay, well, let Supervisor Carlson seconds this one. And discussion. Kim, do you? I can call on Dr. Gale to give a quick explanation of this particular change to his department.
Sure. Thank you, everybody. So one of the duties that we have in justice support is to do pretrial assessments for intake every day. And for the last at least year and a half or 2 years, the Sheriff's Department dispatch has been running criminal history checks for us. It's part of the process. So every morning we gather the names of the people that fit our criteria for an assessment, and then we take that information and we have Ask Dispatch, and they've been great about helping us. But that is not sustainable for us or for dispatch. Just as workloads increase, as our department grows, it's just not fair for us to ask them to do that anymore. So one thing we need to do is we need to have a resolution recognizing pretrial services as an official unit of justice support. So this resolution would do that. I can then take this information to the Department of Justice here in Wisconsin, and they can hopefully give us the ability to run our criminal history checks. So this is kind of the first, maybe second step of maybe 5 steps that would allow us to run criminal history checks. Any questions?
Any questions for Dr. Gale? Oh, Supervisor Anderson.
So you'd be getting the same information, you'd just be able to get it directly instead of bothering or asking another department for it.
That's correct. Really good question. So our case managers would then be able to run the checks as opposed to dispatch. Especially early in the morning, dispatch is dealing with lots of different calls, and it's a time crunch. So we usually get those to them 8:30, and we need them back pretty quick so we can then get the reports and get them up to the judges. So everybody's on a time crunch. So this would remove them from that, not remove them, but it would allow everybody to work a little bit more efficiently, I think. Yeah, but a good question. That there would only be about a handful of people in our department that would have that access. It would be the case managers.
Supervisor Hanson.
Is this going to be another line to your budget? Do you need money for this?
Nope, great question. No, there'd be no additional funding. There would be some onboarding training, but that would be free, and then we would need one centralized computer system in our department, which we already have. But no, there would be no additional monies.
Seeing no further discussion, if we're prepared to vote, we can proceed to vote. The resolution is adopted to establish a pretrial subunit of Justice Support Services. Thank you. We'll now move on to our annual department reports. Highway Department, Robbie Croix. Robbie?
You have my report. A couple things I'd like to add. I'd first of all like to thank the employees and staff at Highway Department. None of this in the report would happen without them. I'd like to note that, I think, as the highest of importance. If you're going to pull anything from this report, please note a couple things. Staff turnover has been a huge challenge the past 2 years for us, and material inflation continues to eat our lunch a little bit harder every year. But with that, I'll turn it over. Are there any questions?
Supervisor Lee.
So the employees that are leaving, are they going for, is it a money issue, or is it the type of work that's done, or is it hard to tell why they're leaving?
So we do exit interviews, and we work together with HR. I personally also offer an exit interview. A large majority of the staff that is leaving for much higher wages in the private sector. So.
Supervisor Austin's.
Not a question, but just a thank you to you and our great highway workers. They do a fantastic job. Our roads are looking better and better all the time, and it's always nice when you're out, whether you're hearing from folks coming in from Minnesota or from our north or south or to the east, they know where the St. Croix County line is just by the way the highways are looking. So thank you guys. It's greatly appreciated.
Supervisor Shirley.
I think I know this answer, but just for clarification, on your budget status, you have an approved budget of 18 million and actual budget of 22. I'm guessing the difference is the grants?
That's actually snow. So we do work, kind of a misleading part of our budget is only about 9 to 10 million is county funding. The rest is just passed through. We do the work for the state and local partners. And this was winter. That's how bad winter was in 22. So unfortunately, all those extra dollars are just snow plowing.
Supervisor Hanson.
When will County Road K Bridge be open?
Since we're not out in public and I'm not being recorded, 2 weeks.
Supervisor.
So that $4 million delta, where does that come from and how did we make that up?
That's not us liability as far as that goes. The state of Wisconsin, we have a contract with them to do their maintenance. We do the work, they pay the bill. Same with our town partners, town and city partners.
So that's not us?
That's not us.
Okay.
We also experienced winter, but what we do is what we did this year was cut a construction project in 2022 to ensure that we didn't go over budget.
Supervisor Lee.
So part of the winter was the fact that the plows kept getting hit by cars, right?
We
There were, how many accidents were there?
We had 16 snowplows struck this winter.
Okay, so PIO, Adam, I think we need some sort of campaign to keep people, I don't know, something. Everybody needs to watch. It's ridiculous.
So we are, and we're part of the WISDOT's winter readiness campaign. So we had one of our drivers that was struck at exit 4 step up and be willing to participate. So you're going to start to see some St. Croix County trucks. We led all counties for snowplow hits. So it was a rough winter for us. And we really are trying to raise that awareness, and it is a big deal going into this winter. We had one driver struck twice within about 2 hours, yes.
Are there any further questions for the, I'm sorry, Supervisor Telejohn.
Does the new lighting system help with the visibility to prevent that?
It can, but a few of our trucks were lit with green that were struck.
Yeah.
There are challenges that come along with snow plowing in adverse conditions, but we also had accidents in bright blue sunshine this year where we're doing cleanup and got struck on the day after the storm. So it was significant. We had some pretty major crashes, including 2 head-ons this past year. So it wasn't just side swipes. It was head-ons, sides, rears. Rear is your typical snowplow hit if I took my whole career. But the next most accidents that I've ever had in 1 year is about just under 6. So we far exceeded any record that I've been a part of.
Supervisor Burning.
I think I would like to ask, and I hope my fellow supervisors would agree with me on this. We'd like a follow-up on what the details are on that and why that happened and what we're doing to, if there's anything we can do as a county or a department to correct that, because that's not something we really want to take home first place trophy on. So, I mean, I guess I'm asking for a follow-up to this, if the chair would be so kind and if you'd be so kind. I'd like to have more details on it.
And if I may, I can give you a brief. We're working together with the WCA and the WCHA, which is the Wisconsin County Highway Association, on some, looking at options as well as awareness campaigns, and then potentially future legislation, if necessary, that we would bring in front of the Transportation Committee for looking for support. So we are aggressively working on that. I think the public education can only go so far. and then we have to work together to, some of these incidents were no braking, running 70 miles an hour into the back end of a truck on 35. Same on 94, pretty significant incidents. So.
And so you're thinking, do we know how many of them were our fault or the other driver's fault? Do we have that breakdown? And I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about this now or if you can, I don't know. I'd like to know more because this just seems alarming to me. And if there's things that we can do, like you said, if there's legislation that needs to be passed, driver education from a new driver standpoint, if that needs to be implemented, there's just so many different things that there's just so much to that to unwrap. So,
and in respect for time, Supervisor Burning, I can reach out to you and we can have a side discussion, or we can add it as a topic. So, whatever is better, we can have it here, or I can have a side conversation with respect to time. So,
we'll figure that out.
Are there any further comments or questions for Robbie? Robbie, thank you again. Supervisor Austin was eloquent in his appreciation of you and your department. I think we all echo that, so thank you. The second annual report comes from the UW Extension, and Carrie Weiss will be joining us by Zoom.
Good evening. Thank you for accommodating my need to Zoom in tonight. I'll probably be really brief in my presentation. Essentially, the biggest thing that happened this year was our transition in leadership, first from Kristen Bruder, then to sort of an interloper with Tim Scootley for about 3 months, and now finally transitioned to me. I've been in the position since March 27th, still trying to further assess what our needs are and what we need to do going forward, but getting a nice grasp of what those things and what those needs are. I would say, as far as our budget, if there's any questions, please feel free to ask, but I know that we had one retirement this year, which helped us change a little bit of our service delivery and also afforded us the opportunity to stay under budget due to some 3% contract change from the university, but yet we were still able to overcome that with the retirement positions. So, questions out of the university?
You can direct your questions directly to Ms. Weiss if there are any questions.
Oops.
Ms. Weiss, thank you very much for the report. I don't see any questions directed for you, and we appreciate all you do for us. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item of business is our request for future agenda items. I don't see any requests for future agenda items. The clerk's report, correspondence, rezoning. We have no reports on that topic. Announcements. We've got some good news. I'm going to call on Supervisor Counter to talk about a project we've heard about for several years that has become a raging success. Supervisor Counter.
Not sure how to answer for raging success, but it's been going very, very well. Okay. We have in New Richmond, they have the new Freedom Park project that's been underway, and military has been quite active all summer with the project, and I don't know if anybody ever gets up into that area. It's up on the kind of the northwest corner of the city along Wall Street in Freedom Park, but currently they've had units there from the engineers all summer, and right now they're putting roof decking on, so most of the trusses are set. They have one more set of trusses on the high part of the roof that they're working on, and then they'll be getting set to get some roofing on it. The guys that have been working there from the military have had nothing but excellent remarks about the projects. The training opportunities for them has been over the top because they've been working with local master trades contractors that have been there as oversight and trainers to help them, and has put them way over the training levels that they would typically get for their annual trainings. So it's what they've been doing is every 2 weeks, there's been a new group that's been coming in, refreshed group, and because their annual trainings are 2 weeks long. So then they kind of start from ground zero again, learning how to pound a nail. Well, I shouldn't go that far, but I mean, it's a big training curve for them, and what they have got out of it is exceptional. They've had all real positive remarks for the training. It's been a great retention tool for the military and recruiting. So they are all very, very happy with it, and it's been really a successful experience for them. So I just wanted to update everybody, and hopefully we'll be able to get some pictures in and share more with you as the project continues. There's a lot of excitement over it, and we're going to keep working it. We'll soon have a new that'll be the new Veteran Center for St. Croix County as a whole, where they will be able to, they're working with the VA Medical Center out of the cities that will have organizations there to help with people with post-traumatic stress disorders and stuff within mostly St. Croix, but also as far as Dunn, Polk, and Pierce counties. We'll be able to share the experience of going there versus all going to Minneapolis. They also will have the part of it, they also do a big project that's works out of there to reclaim medical equipment and get it out to veterans in need. So there's a whole bunch of real positive things that are part of that organization there, and then along with a new senior center, which currently they've been working out of the basement of the Civic Center. Now they'll have this beautiful new facility that looks out with all kinds of panoramic windows looking out over Hatfield Lake. So that's all I got.
Thank you very much for that. I think that is a raging success. I don't I'll call on Administrator Witt for an announcement.
I sent an email out today, but just so you got it, and make sure you put it on your schedules. We'll have a committee of the whole meeting on October 12th at 8:30 a.m. That's a Thursday, and that'll be to review the recommended 2024 budget. And then just as you're planning ahead too, for future county board meetings, they will be all at 5 p.m. going forward. No more morning county board during the. You guys approved it. I'm just reminding you.
And I have one last announcement, and that is the Public Protection and Judiciary Committee conducted its annual inspection of the jail last month. Chief Deputy Sheriff Brett Standard led that inspection, and Captain of the jail, Chris Anderson, Captain Anderson, the jail captain, worked with us closely. We had a very good lunch at the end of it, and we found the jail in tremendous condition, thanks to the facilities people and the sheriff for all he does to keep our deputies safe, our jailers safe, and the inmates safe. It really looked very good, and that followed a state inspection that had occurred about a week earlier, and the state also gave the jail a very fine report. So thank you, Sheriff Knutson, for that. Are there any other announcements? Seeing none, we might set a record. I don't know if Bob Long will count this as a record since we didn't have an official invocation tonight, but at 5:39, we're adjourned. Thank you.